Hello, everyone. I'll talk if you'll listen. Episode 75. We're 25 episodes away from the century mark, and look at us now. 75 episodes in, and still some engaging content to talk and speak about. So, this episode is going to be a little bit different. I have been extremely busy lately, and I'm going to catch you all up on why and just talk a little bit about what's been going on for me. But I also want to dive in deep into these surveys that I've been posting, these polls that I've been posting on the Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter accounts. And first of all, I just want to say shout out to everybody who's been participating because the numbers have jumped. Now, on one end, that's validation from me and showing me like, hey, look, consistency is key. You keep posting, you keep putting out engaging content. This is the result. It's not rocket science. On the other hand, though, it's really helping me get a lot of insight into how we all think. And I say we as in us, you and I. And it's inclusive. It really helps to spark some engaging conversation, and I'm really excited to dive into that. So first, what have I been up to? Why did I miss last week, and why have I been busy? So I've been busy in a good way. So let's start at the last week of August. So last week of August was extremely busy for me, primarily because of masonry. So for many of you who have been listening to this podcast for years now, you know that I am a Freemason, specifically a Prince Hall Freemason. And our fiscal year pretty much runs from September to August or from October to September, depending on who you ask. And the last week of August is really important because you have to get a lot of administrative stuff done before your first meeting of the year. So there was a lot of stress because we met on September 1st. So usually we get some time between the last Wednesday of the month and the first Wednesday of the following month, depending on how the dates fall. And what that does for me and my administration or my cabinet is it allows us to have a meeting, and we usually have about maybe 10 days or so to get any last minute nuggets or, hey, we forgot to mention this in the pre-meeting, because we have our lodge meeting every month, and then we have a pre-meeting at the end of that month, which precedes the lodge meeting. But the way that the calendar fell, we had two cabinet meetings before we had our actual lodge meeting. So check this out. This is how the cookie crumbled. So an announcement came out from the most worshipful Grandmaster of the state of Pennsylvania, which basically he's kind of like the governor of Masonry and conservator of Masonry for the state of Pennsylvania. So anything that he says goes. And he announced that, hey, beginning September 1st, lodges are permitted to meet in person. So a lot of our meetings have been virtual. Actually, all of our meetings have been virtual. So this was huge news. Like, hey, you're allowed to do one of three things. You can meet in person, you can do a hybrid where you have some video and some in person, or you can stay virtual. So our lodge was under the microscope because we are one of the first lodges to meet in any given month, because we meet the first Wednesday of every month. Now, the reason this was a little bit more stressful than normal is, as I mentioned earlier, September 1st just so happened to be the first Wednesday of the month. So not only are we one of the first lodges to meet with this new directive, we are literally the first lodge to meet. So there was no other scouting. For any of my sports fans out there, or any of my musicians out there, or stand-up comedians out there, you know you like to watch the previous game or performance before or act before you go. You can kind of get a read on the crowd, get an idea for what the opposing teams might be doing, get a reaction from just certain other logistical or administrative elements that maybe you hadn't considered, or you just want to see how it played out. I didn't get that benefit. So I was the first game of the year, so to speak. And the only information I had to go off of was the previous year, which was outdated information. So there was a lot of stress, a lot of organizational challenges. Some things went really, really well. I have a great support system around me. But at the same time, I do have some people in newer roles. And when you are the man or woman in charge, everyone's looking to you for direction. And even if you don't know what the best decision is, the only thing you can do is make a decision based on all of the information you have at the time and try to make the best decision possible. And you can't be afraid of making a poor or incorrect decision, because that's how you learn. That's how you grow. And we all know growth is uncomfortable. So check this out. It gets worse. So for the East Coast, in particular, the Southeast and Northeast coasts dealt with varying levels of destruction from Hurricane Ida. And for the Philadelphia area in particular, we had massive flooding. Now, there wasn't great communication coming from the Grand Master or any of his representatives, like, hey, don't meet, or hey, we're getting crazy flooding. So the only thing we really have to go off of are the news reports and just kind of the updates we're getting from hearsay, but nothing official. So I had to make a last minute decision, and I told one of the Grand Master's representatives, like, hey, we're going to stay virtual. By the way, I made this decision less than 10 minutes before I left the house, and I live about maybe 35 minutes away from where I got to go. And about an hour and maybe hour and a half or so before the meeting. So I have lodge members coming from Delaware. I have lodge members coming from Jersey. I have lodge members coming from various parts of Pennsylvania to get to this meeting tonight. And they're all kind of relying on me, like, hey, Tim, what's going on? Are we going to the building or not? What's happening? And I have to make this decision of, okay, we need to meet. I'm being told there's some pretty important and significant people within Masonry who are planning to attend my meeting to see how things go. But I have my membership leaning on me like, hey, I'm not going out there, or hey, I'll go out there if you tell me to. And get this is the crazy part. I not only have to consider the well-being and health of my lodge members, I have to consider their families. Because I got a lot of wives, girlfriends, and significant others looking at me through their partners like, what is this man who is ahead of this organization that you need to be a part of? What is he going to do? Is he going to cause you, my husband, my boyfriend, or the father of my children to go out in that weather for a stupid meeting? Because let's be honest, Masonry isn't going to matter as much to the wives or girlfriends or mothers as it does to the husbands, boyfriends, or fathers of the organization. It's just not the case. So I had to consider that. So I had to make a last minute decision. It was a tough decision. I had to get on the phone with everybody who was traveling quite some time and let them know, hey, we're going virtual. And it was crazy. But and to top it all off, I ran for re-election for my current position, which is basically head of my particular lodge. And if you're not familiar with Masonic terms, let's just say chapter, my local chapter of Masonry. I ran for re-election as the president, essentially. So, oh yeah, by the way, that was going on. But it came and went. Like all things, you kind of just had to muster through it. And although it was stressful, I'm sure I had heart palpitations, and I'm bald now, but somehow managed to get some gray hair out of it, I'm sure. And it was a stressful time, but nevertheless, it happened. We figured it out. Good to go. Now, fast forward to that weekend. I had other things going on that weekend that I had to plan for. I was going out of town Friday into Saturday. Came home on Saturday. Had a wedding to attend on Sunday in Lancaster. And shout out to Bree, my buddy Bree, for the proper. She went to school out in Lancaster, and I remember having a conversation with her one time, and I said Lancaster, and she checked me. She was like, "No, dog." So Lancaster. Went out there. Nice little quaint small town. If any people out there went to Millersville, I want to say maybe Bloomsburg is not too far from there. You may be quite familiar with 222 in Lancaster, and it was a good time. And hit me up on social media or on my phone if you want to ask the particulars of it. But just to give you the light version, that weekend I had an opportunity to see Bill Burr, which if you've been listening to me for quite some time, you know is my second favorite comedian of all time. It was huge. It was refreshing. It was so dope, and it was a really surreal moment. There were parts during the act where I was sitting there in the arena watching him, or whether not the arena, but the theater, I guess, the venue, let's just say, watching him. And I had to remind myself that I was where I was at because I'm so used to hearing his voice on TV or over a podcast. And I feel like I know him so well because he talks a lot about his life in his podcast, similar to what I do on this one. And it was really interesting to be in this state where I'm hearing a familiar voice, but this is my first time actually seeing the instrument that it's coming out of, so to speak. It's like hearing a tuba or a piano your whole life, but never seeing one. And it was really nice to see him in person. Told some great jokes, loved it. My lady and I had a great opportunity to watch him live, and it was a good experience. So shout out to my lady for the tickets. She claimed it was an early birthday gift, but I like to think that it was just an opportunity that she wanted to take advantage of. He was in the area. She knows how much I love him. So she got the tickets. So I really appreciate that. And the wedding on Sunday. So yeah, the wedding on Sunday was nice. It was more of a ceremony. The couple, two good friends, or rather one good friend and his wife, who is becoming a good friend, were already married. They were married before that and never had a ceremony. So they had a ceremony. It was outside. It was really nice. It started to rain, but it somehow added to the ambiance and the environment, which was cool. And it wasn't too bad. Not like it was storming or anything. Reception was inside. Really nice barn. And was able to make some really cool connections and talk about some things and network. And because of the pandemic, you kind of forget, especially when you like to socialize and network, you kind of forget how much you enjoy it and how fulfilling it is for you. So I'm really grateful for the vaccination. I'm really grateful for the masks. And I'm really grateful for the CDC guidelines that allow us to have events similar to the event that I had in Lancaster. Now, I still don't agree with stadiums allowing people in mass to participate in sporting events, but that's a debate for a different day. One key takeaway that I want to talk about really quickly before I transition into how the week after that went is culturally, so this is going to sound a little creepy, but I think for those of us who do the same thing, you can at least relate to where I'm coming from. I like to people watch. I like to do it in a very constructive, philosophical way. I like to see the way different people from different backgrounds, ages, cultures, races interact with something similar to what I'm used to, and the way they interact to things that aren't that I'm not used to. So just hearing certain music play, watching people try to dance, and just watching the alcohol flow amongst the people present at the reception. It was just very interesting to me just to see how different people interact. And I was one of only, I want to say, like 4 black people there And it was very interesting to see who was on the dance floor for which songs and who weren't. And it was very interesting to see like the older people, the way they interacted with the younger people. And it just, on one end, makes me very appreciative for how far we've come as a society and as a country. And on the other end, it makes me really disappointed just to see certain things perpetuated that don't seem to be going anywhere anytime soon, unfortunately. There were definitely some uncomfortable vibes that I got from just older white people there, and they didn't seem to be as social. Now, here's the thing. Of course, my background in this country's history tells me that it could have been racial tension, right? But we don't know. Could person just could have felt out of their element. They could have felt concerned about COVID and wanted to keep their distance. They could have maybe not enjoyed themselves. It maybe wasn't their environment and maybe only had to be there for namesake or for public eye view. Who knows? But I just found that very interesting, and I kind of wanted to put that out there for everybody. And I want you to answer this question: for in your experience, when you find yourself in these social events, what helps you to distinguish someone just being uncomfortable with the environment versus them being uncomfortable with you? What are some key indicators that you look for that can help you distinguish, hey, this person's just uncomfortable and they need to loosen up, or this person's uncomfortable with me? What are some things that you look for? What helps you make that determination? So I want to talk about the following week, which was pretty interesting. I want to talk about that right on the other side of this break. Hey, gang, I'm back. So the following week, I can't be too specific because a lot of it has to do with my career path and work-related observations. So I'll just try to be as vague and non-specific as I can be. However, like I always do, I'm more than welcome, or rather more than happy to discuss on a one-on-one basis. So if any of my listeners feel the need to get that curious monkey off their backs, reach out to me on social media or text message or phone call and just say, hey, what happened? But I experienced some adversity during the week at work and really had to look within myself on how I approached and handled certain discussions in certain situations. I also had an opportunity that I was able to pursue that really helped me to understand kind of like my place in this world and kind of helped me to reaffirm what my values are or what my values were, are, and will be. So I'm really appreciative for those things, and these things occurred both in work and outside of work. So again, if you want the details, feel free to reach out to me. But it just felt like a new challenge each day of the week. It was a little less stressful because all of the Masonic stuff, for the most part, was kind of out of the way. But I still had a busy week. But fast forward to yesterday, if you're listening, or rather 2 days ago, if you're listening to this on Monday. But a buddy of mine had a surprise 30th birthday party, and it was really, really cool. I got to reconnect with some people that I missed dearly. I got to see Josh, who is the producer of the intro that you hear on every episode. And he's been just a huge beacon of light whenever I have the opportunity to interact with him. So I was really appreciative for that. Good luck on learning to drive stick too, Josh, if you're listening. You did better than you thought you did. And although I do appreciate the offer to kind of take over, you kind of think about it. One thing you and I have in common is I like to think that we're great teachers. So you and I both understand that if I'd have took that opportunity away from you and I got behind the wheel, that would have been one less opportunity for you to learn and get comfortable with a manual shift. So don't worry, you did better than you thought you did. And I also enjoyed our conversation on our late night pizza run. But I got to see Josh, which was a pleasure, and I got to see Betsy. Betsy is someone that I don't think I've ever spoken about on the show, but she's just such a warm person. I can't think of anything negative to say about Betsy. Now, I haven't known her for a long time, so it's kind of like I used to say to one of my buddies whenever they say, "Hey, I know so and so. They're a good person." I'm like, "You haven't known them for that long," and of course, I mean that lightheartedly, joking around. But in all fairness, I haven't really had many opportunities for Betsy to get on my bad side or to exhibit a negative trait, but from what I have experienced, she's just a pleasant person. She's a great listener. She's an excellent listener, top tier listener. Really engaging and fulfilling conversation. And I just wish I had more time to interact with her on Saturday. But it was just so much going on. First and foremost, the day wasn't about me. It was about my friend Rich, who was celebrating a big 3-0. So he was embracing more opportunity for knee, hip, and back pain. And if he's lucky, neck pain as well. So when the day is focusing around someone's special day or special time, you don't really get much opportunity to interact with other people because you're taking away from the main event. So there was great food, great socializing. We participated in some fun games and not really much of an opportunity to interact with Betsy, but I'm hoping that I have an opportunity in the near future to talk with her, whether it be on the phone, virtually, or in person. I'm hoping I can continue to develop our friendship, our relationship, and just grow closer as two human beings. So I appreciate Betsy. I appreciate Josh. And I wanted to give them to shout out specifically because they still love, listen to, and support the show. And they gave me some great words of encouragement. I also want to give a shout out to Leslie, who gave me some words of encouragement surrounding the show. She followed the show over this weekend, and I won't know unless she reaches out to me if she ever listens to a second of the show. But I was very sincere when I said, hey, whether you like it or you don't like it, I really would appreciate any feedback you have. And she said she was exposed to some information not too long ago. I think she said a speech, a presentation, dissertation, article from a psychologist who said people who ask for honest feedback are most likely to succeed. So that was some great words of encouragement because I didn't know that. And I'm looking forward to investigating that a little bit more to get more insight there. But shout out to Leslie and shout out to just all of the people that I was able to be introduced to who may never even hear this episode, but it was a good, fun, genuine interaction. And here we are today, where I had a busy day too, but did manage to complete some coursework, which I told you all I would keep you up to date on it. And I'm really, really happy with this coursework. I just feel so empowered. So for those of you who may be starting at the end instead of at the beginning, you may not know how this learning and development journey started. So a really brief recap for the new listeners and for the OGs or the vets, bear with me. So I am a passionate trainer, coach, and talent developer. And these things that I'm passionate in and with have really spoken to the core of who I am. And I did not know that these things mattered so much to me up until recently. So I decided to become proficient in my passion and pursue a learning and development certification. Now, the learning and development industry or field, think kind of like a professional coach, someone who actually has that job. So a coach, a talent developer, a curator of talent, someone who kind of helps you be the best person that you can be, helps you not, they don't teach you what your job is. They teach you how to be more efficient at your job. They teach you useful skills, how to be better with your time, how to be better with your tasks, how to achieve your goals, but more importantly, how to help you help others achieve their goals. So I would be very useful to maybe a director or manager who has a team of maybe 5, 6, 10 people reporting to them or more, depending on the industry. And you want to know how to get the best out of your team. I would be useful to someone like that with a learning and development certification. The certification specifically is an APTD certification, or an associate professional in talent development. And I get to learn some really cool techniques and skills, like how to coach senior level leadership or executives, how to coach adults and learning the science behind the way adults learn, how to succeed in instructional design. So I learned a lot of things regarding instructional design and many, many, many more areas. And today's most recent course that I've completed, which allowed me to get my fourth credit, it had to do with coaching beyond the basics. Now, there were 17 questions in this course, but the cool thing about the courses is they're adaptive. So the amount of questions you get basically are determined by how well you're doing. So if you're getting a lot of questions wrong, they throw more at you to help you reinforce those skills. And that means technically your overall score at the end will be worse because you handled more questions, because you got more wrong, but you're at least giving more opportunities to understand your coursework. I was able to complete this course in 17 questions, and I got 16 of them right. And the one that I got wrong, it was one of those check all that apply. So, for example, let's say there's 6 answers. You have to select as many as you think that are right. So, although I did select all of the ones that were correct, I selected one that was incorrect. So, for example, if there were 5 answers and 2 of them were right, I selected both of the answers that were correct, but I also selected an incorrect answer. So they counted that as an incorrect answer overall. So I got 16 out of 17 right, but 94% of the answers that I got right, I knew the answer to. So they have a really cool system where it says, select the answer that you think is right. And after you select the answer that you think is right, I want you to select if you definitely know the answer, if you think you know the answer, if you're unsure, or if you have no idea. And almost all of the answers, if not all of the answers, I selected, I know the answer. So 94% of my answers, I knew the answer to, which is a huge confidence booster. Imagine doing something your whole life. Maybe someone taught you unofficially, whether that's how to be a mechanic, whether that's how to give someone stitches, whether that's how to administer a shot or do CPR. And then you actually go through the official coursework and get an accredited certification or degree, and you get the majority of the coursework correct. You're like, wow, so I actually knew this stuff already. So it's a huge confidence booster. It really, really is. And it helps you kind of reaffirm your self-worth, or at least give you an idea of your self-worth. Because when you find yourself in an environment where the things that you're talented in aren't appreciated, aren't practiced, or aren't recognized, and then you do something and that independent source, whether that be a person, place, or thing, tells you, hey, you're actually good at this stuff and you know what you're talking about, it can really make you feel good. Self-validation is next level. The most basic version that I can think of right now of self-validation is if you are noticing something. Like, hey, I noticed that every time I come in with blue pants, Becky flirts with me, right? And you don't know how true that is. And then you hear from Becky herself, hey, I really like it when you wear blue pants. That you're like, I knew I was right. You know, you get this overwhelming overwhelming sense of validation. It's just super cool. So I really got an opportunity to um, rebuild or reinforce my confidence, and I'm really excited to tackle the next course. And if you all can bear with me and be patient with me, I'm going to talk about as many courses that I've taken as I can. And the biggest takeaway I will say for those of you who are interested that I got from today's coursework is something that's called micro coaching, which is pretty dope. In short, without boring you, it basically just means you're giving people bits of coaching for throughout the day or throughout the week in various different ways. So, for example, let's say you and I just learned how to use Microsoft Word. I'll use something really basic. Let's say you just learned how to do Microsoft Word, and I know you now have a meeting with HR to talk about what you learned. So let's say about 30 minutes before your meeting, I shoot you an email and I say, hey, great job on learning Microsoft Word. Don't forget the following. And remember, you got this. Here are the areas you did really, really well in, and you need to ride that confidence into the meeting. That's a form of micro coaching. Or let's say after you and I meet on how to use PowerPoint, I shoot you a text message with an article or a video or a YouTube link on some of the stuff that we just talked about. That's a form of micro coaching. So I got to become even more proficient in that than I was already, and I can't wait to kind of apply that in an environment that embraces that sort of behavior. So I'm really excited about that. So with that said, I really want to move into the meat of today's episode. And I want to talk a little bit about these polls. Some of y'all answers have really been great and have really sparked some thoughts in me, and I can't wait to dive deep into it. So more on the polls, more on your answers, right on the other side of this break. Welcome back, everybody. So there are a lot of polls that I did, and it's really tough to it's really tough to pick one that I want to kind of like key in on, but I'm going to use the very latest one. But I encourage you all to keep an eye on my stories on Instagram and Facebook, and to keep an eye on my tweets for Twitter, so you can participate in these polls. And if you're too shy or bashful to participate, even though I'm the only one that can see who picked what, I encourage you to at least look at them and hopefully have a discussion with people that you are comfortable having discussions with. The goal of these polls is to not only get a little bit of insight on the way we all think, but also to spark a philosophical discussion in your own circle, in your circle. I want you to talk to your partner, your friend, your kids, your parents about some of these things. And what I really want to do, my ultimate goal is just to challenge your way of thinking. I think so many of us think the things that we think, not because we truly want to think them or that they are our own thoughts, but more so it's just our way of thinking has never been challenged. I know I spoke about this before, and not to sound like a broken record, but how many of us are religious or practice a certain religion because our way of thinking has never been challenged? How many of us prefer private school over public school because our way of thinking has never been challenged? And to put a smile on Josh and Betsy's face, how many of us have only ever preferred or driven an automatic transmission because our way of thinking has never been challenged? So I'm going to talk about this poll that I like to think is interesting, and yes, I know I'm biased, but I'm going to tell you what the poll was. I'm going to tell you what the answers were, and I'm going to give you what my takeaways were. And then I'm going to let you all get back to the rest of your day or evening. So, the post was, let's end the debate. Can two people who are attracted to one another maintain a productive and platonic relationship? again, can two people who are attracted to one another, so you find each other attractive, they physically and aesthetically, they are your type of person. Can they maintain a productive and platonic friendship? Can you do things like go to the movies or go have brunch or go to Six Flags or any other amusement park? Can you do things like travel or have business meetings, et cetera, and keep those interactions productive while maintaining a platonic relationship? Or do you think that they are doomed to end up in a failed relationship because someone tries to make a move or the friendship is ruined with sex or flirting or any other um, intimate connection that may ruin the friendship? So the answer is that the answers given were yes, it's very feasible, or no, it's unrealistic. And believe it or not, 54% of you say, yeah, it's very feasible. You can have a productive and platonic relationship with someone that you're attracted to. Meanwhile, if you're any good at math, unlike myself, you'll understand that 46% said no way. Now, I found something really interesting. It was a good mix of men and women who said yes or no, but I found that more women said yeah than men. More men actually said no, which I found interesting because, in my experience, most men say yeah and women say no. And this is why I love these polls because not only does it is it designed to challenge you all's way of thinking, it helps to challenge my way of thinking because it really helps me wonder. Like again, if you'd asked me before I got those results, I'd have said, well, most men think you can, and most women think you cannot. And I probably would have went on some sort of rant or spiel as to how women are much more territorial, so they probably look at women as a threat, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And not to say that that opinion or that viewpoint is wrong, but it was my experience at the time. But after looking at these poll results, I see that hey, it's worth challenging. And just because I like y'all, I'll do one more that I thought was really worrisome, but also encouraging, and I'm not the only one. So another poll, the poll previous to the one that I just read, said whether it's a relationship, a hobby, a business, a job or career, or anything else, what has been your biggest challenge? The commitment to starting something or the consistency to seeing things through? So basically, again, do you struggle with the commitment to getting something started or do you struggle more with consistency and accomplishing what you set out to accomplish? Accomplishing what you set out to accomplish. So 31% said starting, while 69% of you all said finishing. Now, I can say I struggle with both. And I'm sure many of the people who answered also said they struggled with both. However, I'd like to agree that most of us feel more challenged when it comes to finishing. I think that's because we get really excited. We get this high about starting something, right? Sometimes it's really easy to start something, whether it be something like a relationship because you're caught up on a high and you're really attracted to someone, or whether it be something like a hobby. Again, let's take this podcast. Really easy for me to get started and record a couple episodes, but the consistency to seeing an episode through and then editing it and publishing it and making it to episode 75 now, it can be really challenging. I mean, think about what number episode we'd be on if consistency wasn't a challenge for me. And the poll was really refreshing because, again, it was nice to see people in my peer group to say finishing is a challenge because when you feel like you're the only one experiencing something, you start to feel worthless or miserable and you start to feel less than. You're like, you know what? It's only me. But when you see other people struggle with the same issues, it makes you feel better, in a selfish way. It makes you feel better because you're like, you know what? I'm not alone. And it can be positive too. There's a silver lining there because if 69% of these people And let's keep in mind, I have very little exposure on social media at the moment. I'm only getting like about 100 views to the story or so. But it lets you know, hey, if 69% of the people who voted feel the same way I do, maybe they have overcome something, or maybe they overcame this challenge, and I can reach out to them and get advice on how to overcome my challenges. Or maybe we can start a support network or a support group, and we can all encourage each other, like, hey, we can do it, we can do it, we can do it. So my buddy Nari, aka Coach Na, he is almost as passionate, if not more than I am, when it comes to coaching and development and developing talent. He's just a little bit more in the sports thing than maybe the learning and development field, but even our hearts are in the same place. And he and I just met this year, but we're like, hey, we're going to hold each other accountable to our goals, and I'm going to let you know when I get this certification, or I'm going to let you know what this certification is going to be like. So shout out to Coach Nine, and shout out to Reese, aka Ace, as well, for their own podcast, Two Kings 215 podcast, which I had the honor and privilege of being a part of. If you follow me on social media, I'll provide a link to that episode and promote it for you. But go check them out. They have some really great guests on, and even if they didn't, just those two, the tag team duo, they do a really, really good job of just talking about some issues in a very conversational way. So I really like their personality too. They're fun, they're not stiff, really laid back, and they're not afraid to be themselves. So I do encourage you to go listen to the Two Kings 215 podcast that is on all major streaming platforms. So I hope I didn't take up too much of your time today. I hope I kept you as entertained as I intended. And I hope I gave a lot of you something to think about. I hope I put a smile on your face. And I hope that the next time I see you, we can have a productive and engaging discussion. Well, enjoy the rest of your day or night. And until the next time, I'll keep talking if you'll listen. Take care.